When you talk about giving and having an impact in the world, money is one path, but there are so many other paths, and many of them are more powerful in a way in that you can convey your own unique contribution.
Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated to providing you with life strategies with a little bit of entrepreneur advice. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, "Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day." Hey everyone, welcome back to the Networking with Michelle show. I'm your host, Michelle Gomez, where we discuss life strategies with a bit of entrepreneurial advice. Look, today, very special guest, Mr. John David Mann. He is the author, the co-author of the book, The Go-Giver, which came out about 10 years ago, and the new book, The Go-Giver Influencer. And if you are big in online marketing and podcast, this book is very, very popular within the community as far as, you know, of course, doing podcast interviews to promote the book and the concept. And I just love this book. This is a classic business book, and the components of this book are valuable regardless, right? Business or no business. I believe this book is a great template when it comes to living a life of significance, right? Living a life of value, understanding and operating in your purpose. This is definitely the book for you. And if you are along those lines, which I know you are, because you wouldn't be on this journey if you weren't this journey with me, you're going to absolutely love this interview and just the things that we discuss. And I think one thing that we hit on that's really, really important, and I speak as an older millennial where I have friends, we are doing some great things in the community, right? And not just in Houston, but the people I connect with, we are doing great things, running for office, creating nonprofits, doing businesses with the social awareness component behind it. And we want to do good, but then we're kind of struggling financially in the sense where, you know, I do okay for myself to pay bills, but how can I give, right? How can I contribute? And we talk about the ways that you can contribute beyond the financial component. Don't get me wrong. We all need money. Okay. We all need money, nonprofit, for profit. We all need money. But we talk about it. You know, what is money? What is influence? And how can I give? How can I be a person of value? And this, hands down, one of the best interviews. John, once again, thank you. Carrie Heaps, she's been a guest on the show. Thank you for connecting us. Very, very grateful. And without further ado, I know you're going to love this interview. You're absolutely going to love it. So I hope you enjoy. Hey everyone, today's special guest is Mr. John Mann. He is the author of the new book, Go-Giver Influencer. John, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks, I'm doing great. Great to be here. Thank you.
Good. So I have checked you out, and it seems like you have quite the life, not just a career, the life. So can you just give our audience, get us up to speed as far as, you know, just what you do today as well as the book?
Sure. I mean, I've sort of lived a couple of lifetimes, professionally speaking. I'm not going to get crazy on you here. I started out in life as a classical musician. My dad was, my brother was. I played the cello. I was a composer, and then I went into education, alternative education, and then I went into business and retail, and then sales training, and did a lot of editing. And I'm cutting a long story very short. Mm-hmm. I ended up writing books. And I kind of backed into that. I ended up writing other people's stuff, like other people's life stories, memoirs, and so forth. I've done stories in everything from business leaders to political leaders to a former Navy SEAL to, you know, all kinds of people, especially entrepreneurs. I've been a lot in the entrepreneurial world. But about 10 years ago, I really kind of started carving out this career in late life as an author, as a co-author, and especially starting with The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver, which I wrote with Bob Berg, my buddy Bob Berg, we published a little over 10 years ago. I can't believe it now, but it's true. It's almost 10 years old. And the book came out in early 2008 and kind of took off. And it's weird. Instead of making a boom and then fizzling, it went out in the world. And every year it's kind of grown and grown and grown and grown, kind of a cult following. So we came out with another book, The Go-Giver Leader, and then a book about sales in the Go-Giver. And now this new one, The Go-Giver Influencer. This is the fourth book in what's become a series. So that's my story.
2008 was an interesting year. I was in banking and finance at that time. And then, we had the recession.
Oh, yeah.
So to write a book about giving, followed by the leadership component, the sales component, what were you seeing in order for you to even develop those two books?
It's a great question because it was an interesting time. And so, we come out with this book. It actually came out the last week of December, 2007.
Okay.
Right. So, the world is still kind of stable, right? Sort of. Housing is already starting to collapse, but it's, we're still living and breathing. And the book came out and it had a nice reception and people were buying it and talking about it. And the basic idea of the book, and I'll answer your question after I kind of go through this. The basic idea of the Go-Giver was the idea that coming from a spirit of generosity, that is putting other people's interests first before one's own, is not just a noble and kind-hearted and sort of good way to be as a person, ethical and moral. It's also tangibly practical. It's also an effective way to go about business. The idea there is that people who know you, like you, and trust you, as you gain that, you create that reputation of trust in the world. It comes back to you many times over. And the business person who is known for having a spirit of generosity is a business person that people are going to trust and want to do business with. And so this idea that it's not like a question of, do I do well? Do I look out for myself? Or do I help other people? But those aren't contradictions. It isn't either or. It isn't, I'm either going to be a good person or I'm going to be a wealthy person. I'm going to do well in business or I'm going to be a nice person. It's not an either or choice. That those two can go hand in hand. Okay, so here's this book. It comes out, kind of a high-minded, idea, right? And then the economy collapsed and shattered around us all. And it hit publishing, one of the earliest places it hit, actually. Banking and publishing, New York City was hit. And then, of course, the whole world economic system was in tremors. And we figured, suddenly people are in survival.
Right.
Houses are underwater. They've lost their 401ks. Everything is upside down. People are struggling. They are in survival. And our little book about having a generous spirit is just going to kind of get lost. The opposite happened. It seemed like the worse the economy got, the more people were buying our book, which we thought was really fascinating. So we started talking with a lot of people who were reading the book. And what we found was that people were kind of using this philosophy as a lifeboat in troubled times. We write about that in the second book, Go-Giver, Sell More, about the idea that the Go-Giver is about creating value. It's also about making yourself valuable. It's about making yourself, regardless of what business you're in and what your product or your service or your company or whatever your deal is that you offer the world, you're also offering yourself and making yourself a more and more valuable commodity by the kind of person that you become and grow into and the kind of reputation that you create, that even when the economy is collapsing around you, people are going to know who you are and come and remember you and going to want to do business with you first. That's and then the Go-Giver Leader just was a natural outgrowth from there because I've always been interested in leadership and what creates genuine leadership.
That's what I love about us. Obviously, speaking as American people, like we're just resilient people. And then even when we are in hard times, like the way we just stick together, like this past summer, we had Hurricane Harvey. And even though I wasn't affected, it's just like my friends and I were like, okay, we got to go donate. We have to go buy some supplies, donate, who needs help. And it's the way we stick together in hard times is just outstanding.
I love that you said that, because it's so important to remember. And particularly now, I know we'll get into this more in this conversation, particularly these days when sort of the truism of the moment is that we've forgotten how to talk to each other, which sort of seems true in many ways, that there's this increasingly fractious, polarized, antagonistic conversation, particularly on social media, but not just on social media. Is it political? Yeah, but it's not just political. It's political, it's racial, it's gender, it's every imaginable division of groups seems to be harsher and more antagonistic. I don't know if that's really true or if it's just showing up that way. But I think it's really important. And the new book addresses that fact, so we'll probably talk about that. But I think it's important to remember that as much as we hear about that and demonstrate that there's this other side, that when times get tough, we really have an amazing capacity to hang together, to help each other, to come to people's aid and rescue when they're underwater, literally underwater, like Harvey.
Yeah.
I wrote a book last year with a friend who lives in Houston. And I was in Southern Florida, and we were both getting ready to launch our book, and suddenly he got hit by Harvey. And then just as he's digging out of Harvey, we got hit by Irma. My wife and I had to evacuate. Yeah. It's like, oh my goodness. It's everywhere.
Crazy.
Even the climate is antagonistic. Right?
And you can't control that at all.
Yeah.
So fast forward 10 years later, or a little bit more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Now we have the Go-Giver Influencer.
Yes.
And, we're in this digital age now. I guess influencer marketing and influence is the key word. So what led to this point, and what's the goal of this book?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of got a multi-pronged answer, because influencer, we kind of look at, Bob and I, when I say we, Bob and I kind of look at influencer in two ways, and they're connected, but they're a little distinct. One of them is how you become a person of influence. Like, what is genuine influence? And I have to say, Michelle, that this topic of influence, genuine influence, has been in all of our books. It's something we've been writing about since the start. The Go-Giver was based on 5 laws, and one of those is called the laws of influence. The Go-Giver Leader, there's a chapter called the substance of influence. And in this new book, of course, it's in the title, the Go-Giver Influence. So we've been looking at that. And so the other meaning of influence, first, influence is how you become an influential person, how you become a person that, what is an influential person? An influential person is someone that others look to. If you are influential in a particular area, in real estate, in the economy, in the arts, in whatever it is, your field is, then when people want to get a reading on something in that field, they look to you. They come to your website, or they go to your page, or whatever they do. They go to your Facebook. So an influential person is someone that others listen to. It's someone that others respect their opinion. It's also someone that people go to in times of trouble and times of conflict. So that's, in part, this book is a study on how do you become that? How do you become that person? And I think it's valuable to be that person. It's valuable in a business sense. You want to be the authority. You want to be the respected one. The other side of influencer is how to influence somebody in the sense of persuading them in a position of conflict. Like, let's say you and I disagree about something political. We probably don't, actually, but let's just say we do. Let's say we disagree about something, about the world, or about our economy, or about our city, or whatever it is, our community. There's 2 ways of going about this. There's the way of going about it, which is what people increasingly do and have done forever, but they do more and more, which is kind of go at it like this. Mm-hmm. And then there's a way of going at it, which is, there's a second way, which is to give in and just let the other person run over you, which isn't any more effective than the first way. First way, you just have a fight, and you both go away mad. The second way, you give up, they win, you lose, and they feel superior, you feel terrible, and the world is not a better place. We're looking for a third way, which is, the shorthand for that is win-win. But I think win-win is a tired shorthand. In real life, what passes for win-win too often is really compromise. and compromise of the type where neither one of us gets what we really want. We both sort of settle for half of what we were hoping for. And it's like everybody goes away unhappy, equally unhappy. So it's really more like lose-lose. Or like we agree to disagree and go away. So what this book is all about is how to engage in conflict and come out of it in a productive way that raises all the ships, not just yours, not just the other person's, but both of you. That's really the core of the book. And it's a parable. So it's a story about two characters, Jackson Hill and Jillian Waters, who are having a business negotiation. We almost called the book The Go-Giver Negotiator.
That crossed my mind.
They're having this negotiation. Jackson needs something. He needs something that she's got. He is the owner of this, like he's a small business owner, and she works for a big corporation. And he has something he needs something she's got. She needs something he's got. They both need to win at this deal, but they're kind of at cross purposes. So it's a perfect setup for a pitched battle. Mm. And the challenge of the story is, how do these two get through this negotiation and come out on the other side? Which one's going to win? Are they both going to lose? Or are they going to redefine what winning means and discover something that neither one of them even saw in the beginning? It's number 3, of course.
No, I mean, that's so important because, I mean, obviously everything you said is correct. And I would hate to, how do we build ourselves up to be this valuable person, and then we have to go in this room and compromise, you know, and finding that balance in between, you know, am I still as valuable even though I'm compromising, whether it is business or personal?
Yes. Yeah. And that's a great question that I keep saying that's a great question because they keep being great questions. I'm not making that up. So it's kind of the question of how do you abide by the principles in a book like this and take that into your real life situation and make it work without, you know, having the world run all over you. Because let's face it, the world can be a harsh and terrifying place, and it can be cruel. And so neither Bob or I are naive about that. So let me go at that question this way. In the Go-Giver, the law of influence, there's in the original Go-Giver, there's 5 laws. We call them 5 laws of stratospheric success. And the first law is that your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. Okay. If you become known as somebody who gives more in value than you take in payment, then your coin goes up. You know, your value goes up. Your worth goes up in the world. Take, for example, if you run a little restaurant and you don't just serve great food, you serve phenomenal food, cooked with love, but better than that, there's this ambiance, there's this attitude of customer service that's just mind-blowing. People are so, you know, the spirit in the place is so high. People are so happy. They're so helpful, and they're so dedicated to the restaurant. And also, when you walk in, just the way the decor is done, you just automatically feel at home. I mean, everything about the way this thing is set up just makes you have a great experience. Some of that costs money. Some of that is just care. It isn't even expensive.
Right.
But that's giving more value than you take in payment. You can be a coffee shop and create what I just described. Right? It doesn't have to be expensive or luxury or anything. Also, and here's the point I'm getting to, that first law does not mean give your stuff away. And people often come back to Bob and me after reading the book and say, I read your book and I loved it, and I'm starting to give away my stuff on my website. We're like, no, you'll go broke. The point isn't to go broke. We're not making the point that if you're a good person, you discount all your wares. I'm not a big believer in steep discounting. No, charge what you're worth. Charge top dollar if that's worth top dollar. We're not saying cheapen yourself. We're saying add value. And there's lots of ways of doing that. They often come down to personal attention and the relationship and the interaction more than anything in the tangible cost of goods involved. But in any case, so that's kind of that's law number 1 in the Go-Giver. And then there's a second law of compensation. The third law is the law of value. And it's the same deal here. The law of value says your value is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. This is tricky because it's really easy to misinterpret this and hear it as, I become my influence is determined by how much I'm going to make myself a doormat and let people walk all over me. No, that's not what we're saying. Mm-hmm. When we say place other people's interests first, we don't mean become a martyr, sacrifice yourself, or let people run over you. If people want to run over you, then you can be generous, you can be gracious, you can be kind, and you can be tactful about it, but you can't let them run over you. Part of that is having a really clear sense of boundaries and being really clear about saying, listen, I appreciate what you're saying. I get what you need. This is what I can do. I can't do this. I won't be able to accommodate that, and be really clear about that. All of the Go-Giver books have that implicit message. Yes, be generous of spirit, be tactful, be kind, be always open to interrupt myself. The fifth law in the influencer book is to let go of having to be right in an argument, which means not assuming that you're wrong or assuming that the other person is right, but let go of the kind of white knuckle grip on having to be right, because it's like opening up your mind to the possibility that there's something here I haven't seen yet. Like, let's say my wife and I have a dispute. Let's say she remembers something that happened yesterday one way, and I remember it the other way. She says, yesterday, you said blah, blah, blah. And I know I didn't say that. I said blee, blee, blee. And I know that because I remember it. She said, no, you said blah, blah, blah. I could insist on being right. I remember this clearly. If I had a recording and played for you, I said blee, blee, blee. But there may be something bigger going on here. There may be another level of right. It may not be about this. Mm-hmm. That's what letting go of having to be right means. It means open up your mind to another possibility, which is what happens to Jackson and Jillian in this book. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but it's a question of, yes, being generous in spirit with your left hand, with your right hand also being really clear on what your parameters are, what you can do, what your goal is, and who you are.
I've been thinking about this week, so I'm going to share this with you. I haven't clarified it in my head yet, but for the past couple of years, there's been a lot of buzzwords as far as authenticity, being vulnerable, and transparency. And part of me feels like I would like to assume everyone is true, but what about the word being courageous, right? And I guess because if I share something personal to you, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm vulnerable, but maybe I'm just being courageous enough to share that information. I guess what's your take on that, and just the whole concept of mastering your emotions while telling your story within this storytelling age?
Yes. I think that's very interesting. I think in the Go-Giver itself, actually, the fourth law is the law called the law of authenticity. So interesting you'd bring that up. And that law simply says the greatest gift you have to offer. And this is all about adding value and giving value and putting people so forth. So it says the greatest gift you have to give is yourself. And that's meant for business people, especially in any business. So yes, authenticity and vulnerability. It's interesting. We have a dog down the street. Whenever we walk, my wife and I take a walk down the street, and the dog sees us coming, she flips on her back and shows us her belly. This is a dog's way of saying, I am not a threat to you, and I acknowledge that you are not a threat to me. I'm showing you my belly. In her case, it's also her way of saying, would you please pat my belly?
Right.
But this is what wolves do, or this is what wild animals do in the wild. When they trust one another, they show their underside. The way humans do that, hopefully, is not flopping down on the floor. The way humans do that is by showing their vulnerability in words. Like, for example, if you and I are having a hot and heavy argument on Twitter, right? We're tweeting back and forth. I might say, well, Michelle, if you'd only done your research, you'd know blah, 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 blah. Okay, that is a classic way of discussing by war. All right. There's no way you can feel good about that. There's no way I can have opened up the possibility for dialogue. What I've just done is said, basically, I'm going to throw a weapon at you. So get your sword, get your shield up. I could say on the other hand, so Michelle, I may not be right about this, or there may be more going on than I understand, but here's my thinking. In other words, I can say something that opens me up to vulnerability. This isn't exactly what you're asking. I know you're asking more about telling your story and showing yourself. But I just want to make the point about vulnerability, that when you open a conversation or continue a conversation in social media or anywhere else by showing your underbelly, it would seem like you're showing weakness. In practical fact, it usually creates a position of strength. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was invited by my agent. There was a very well-known, very famous author. I can't say who it was because there's confidentiality agreement there. But a very famous author was struggling to write a book and needed a writer to help. And talked to my agent. My agent called me in and said, "Can you work with this guy?" And so I get on the phone with this guy who's like one of my idols. And he gets on the phone, and the very first words out of his mouth were, "So, John, are you even half as good as these ladies say you are?" Which was A, a challenge, B, these ladies kind of condescending to them. It's like it was wrong on all these levels, right? So without hesitating, I said, "Yes, sir, I am exactly half as good as they say I am." And he laughed and laughed, and he ended up, the moral of the story was, after I finished the job, he paid me what my fee was and doubled it. He tipped me my entire fee.
Yeah.
So by being vulnerable and saying, instead of bragging, doing the opposite of bragging, in our first conversation, his respect for me went up enormously. If I had said, "Well, sir, I like to think so. I like to think I'm just, I'm up to the task, and here's my experience, and I'm blah, 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 here's why I'm so great," I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So back to your question about authenticity. I think authenticity is so important, but I think it's important to also be selective and appropriate. Authenticity doesn't mean that you need to tell your story and spill everything that's going on for you at every turn. Sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is listen. Sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is not interrupt, not speak up, and just, and sort of almost like you take a back seat with a person. It's situational and depends. I don't think I answered your question, though.
No. Well, I love the conversation regardless.
Okay. Maybe frame it again. If there's more you want, I'll say more.
No, but I love what you said, because I do think, and then going back to your story, actually, I love how you added humor, right? So not being braggadocious, but adding some humor,
yes,
which is being who you are, being authentic and I guess slightly vulnerable in that sense. That kind of, it just levels the playing field, right? Yeah. So if he was on 10, which could be defensive,
oh yes,
knock him down,
yes,
and you clear the air. So I love that, and I don't think maybe that's not even talked about enough. Just adding humor to
it story. Is. You're so right. A humor, particularly if it's genuine. I mean, right. A snide, snarky humor doesn't usually work too well, but yeah, humor and along similar veins, and it's almost like a cliche, but just to smile. If you're in person, or to say something like, and my co-author Bob is a master at this, in confrontive situations, like you're checking in at the hotel, you're about to go to a conference, and you check in, you have an hour to change and get there, and they say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, Mr. Mann, your room's not available yet," and you had made the arrangements to make it available, right? Or they say, "We don't have your reservation here, and there's no room," right? It's like, it's really easy to start screaming at the person, or at least to say, "This is impossible. I can't believe this. What's wrong with you people?" You get to get all that. Instead, to simply say, now this, humor might work, but instead to say something like, you guys must be so jammed right now. You must be going crazy.
Yeah.
Just an ounce of empathy can shift the situation so that now we can have a conversation. In the book, that's our third secret of ultimate influence, which is to set the frame, to reset the frame of the conversation. And you said it, a little humor, a little empathy, a little camaraderie. This is what comedians always do when they say, "Hey, anybody here from New Jersey?" That doesn't usually work when you're across the hotel desk, but those are the elements of civil discourse, the elements of human exchange, which are easy to kind of forget about, but they're so powerful.
So important. So important. I know a lot of my listeners, we are professionals that are either transitioning into entrepreneurship or we have a side business. I have colleagues that have been running, I'll say they're in their 30s, maybe 28 to 32, running for office, which I'm like, oh my God.
I love it. Fantastic. Oh man, we need you. We need you desperately.
and then, running for local office is just the beginning, The sky's the limit. And, we're creating nonprofits and a lot of social good. And, they say your network is your net worth, and it's trying to, how do I balance all of this? Usually finance dollars, right? To donate to this political campaign, to donate to this organization.
Yes.
And how can I be a giver? Or can you talk about how giving goes beyond money? Because I think lots of times we just get stuck with the financial piece and the 10% to church and our bills and I don't have nothing left, or I want to go on vacation.
Yes. So you're so right. And it's, there's only so much, money is certainly one dimension of giving. There's no question. Tithing is a powerful thing. Donation, contribution, nonprofit, financial activity is a powerful thing. But let's not forget what money is. Money is a store of value that was created by somebody's activity. Wherever you see a dollar or a quarter, there's some human activity behind that created value. So you can of course funnel money here or there to this campaign or that activity to have some impact in that sphere, and that is great. But you can also create the value directly. Time. Your time, again, 24 hours in the day, but how you divvy your time, where you focus your time. Your voice. Voice is so powerful. Look what these teenagers, high school students in Parkland, Florida have done with no more than 24 hours a day than we have. And with, not any financial contribution, but just through their voice. So they had an extraordinary platform because of the confluence of circumstance. Most of us don't have that tragic circumstance that creates that. But, we've all got circumstance that creates platforms if we're looking for it. And, as you said, local is only the first step, but in a way, local contains all the steps, because what you do locally is a microcosm of what you do that can be global, in the blink of an eye, like these high school kids are showing. But I think it's a really excellent question to always keep in mind. When you talk about giving and having an impact in the world, money is one path, but there are so many other paths, and many of them are more powerful in a way in that you can convey your own unique contribution. If you give $10 and I give $10, they're both $10. But if you speak for 5 minutes in front of somebody and I speak for 5 minutes in front of that group, those are two totally different 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's not about just your experience. It's about what's in your heart. It's about who you are and what you dream, what you hope, what you love, what you fear, what you aspire to, all those things wrapped up in who you are. That is tremendous value if you find the right time and place for it.
I love that. I do think we forget about our voice. At least I forgot about our voice. My voice is a resource.
Yeah. Look at you right now. Look at what you're doing right now. This is, by the questions you ask. Yes, you bring on guests like me, but it's you bringing out these things with, your own voice, particularly in this age where, hyper-technological platforms for everybody's voice are free. It's like they're right there. So you can use Twitter to bash on me, or you can use it to change the world.
Do you think, well, going back to, I guess, me and my people as a whole, just as an older millennial, and, we did the education piece, we did the corporate piece, and it's like, I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah.
And we're redefining what success looks like.
Yeah.
I believe Go-Giver seems to be a great template to set the framework of becoming a person of significance, and then the success follows depending on how you define success.
Yes. Yeah. There was this book years ago, do what you love and the money follows.
I have it.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Marsha Senator, there you go. Of course, the truth is that isn't always exactly true.
Right.
Because sometimes you do what you love, and if what you love is making beanbag cushions, great wealth may follow, but it may not. I think that I'm not putting down beanbag cushions, by the way. I'm just saying anything. I love to compose music. I started out as a composer. I composed. Money did not follow. But I think it's more a question of do what you love that the world wants, that the world needs, that the world accepts. Do what you love that adds significant value to the world, that has an impact on the world, and success will for sure follow. I'll tell you my story, my experiences. When I was a teenager, some friends and I were tired of the schools where we went. We wanted to start our own school, and I dropped out of school in my junior year, and we started our own high school. And I went back later to it as a paid faculty member, and the school ran for like 10 years. It did pretty well. Of course, it was not possible that a group of high school students could start their own high school, but we didn't know it wasn't possible. And so we did it anyway. And it was very successful. And I went from there to, I never graduated from college. I have sort of hopped from entrepreneurial area to area kind of all my life. And, I've lived my whole life based on the idea that if I follow my curiosity and my passion, I will sooner or later stumble into a situation that is going to handle my bills. That hasn't always been ideal.
Hold on, I have to play this one piece from my mom. Look what I learned today. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Hey, kids, drop out. Stay in school. Stay in school. That's what I meant to say. That's only my path. That's only what I did. But yeah, I think that there are more and more opportunities to carve out your career, carve out your niche, carve out your destiny in this world. It's a more and more fluid marketplace, I think.
Yeah, I agree with the power of the internet and social media. You can literally work from home and sell anything. You can jump online and do a consultation with someone in South Africa. You can ship a product to, Dubai and all.
And people talk a lot about your brand, your personal brand. I think sometimes brand is a little overdone because it kind of makes it into a formula. But I think what's really true is you can as you grow into the person you are, as you grow in years and you develop an experience, and as you blossom, as we all do in this journey of our lifetime, as you figure out more and more who you are and express that more, the internet, man, you can create your voice like that on the internet. It's not about clever techniques of marketing and branding so much as it is being authentic and being clear on who you are and putting your voice out there. The sites that I see out there, the Facebook pages and the websites that are just kicking it, are those, they're like Gary Vee, those that are just incredibly true to themselves and let their passion show through. It's amazing the followings and the audience that you can generate doing that.
Yeah. And make a living off of it, an honest living.
And an honest living can follow. Exactly. Yep.
That's what it should say. Do what you love and an honest.
That's a nice point.
I read that book, almost 18 years ago? About 15, 18 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I still have it.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it obviously struck a chord for both of us.
Yeah. And but I love what you said. It's a fluid market now, and I think, one of my biggest regrets is not sticking to things long enough. I think if I was to stick with certain things, the curiosity piece, I've always had it. But if I stick with certain, I guess, careers long enough, who knows what that measurement of success would look like in that area.
I know. It's a tricky thing because sometimes what really happens is you go into one area. This is what I've observed anyhow. You go into one area and it may be a matter of months, maybe years, more likely years, years and years in, something else comes along which is similar to what you're doing, connected to what you're doing, or the tangents from what you're doing. It's like the opportunity that comes along. And if you follow that path, that's how it's been for me. I never planned to be a writer. It was never my goal. I never sat down and said, okay, what are the steps I need to take to become a writer? I'd like to say that's true, but it isn't. I never did that. I fell into editing because it just needed to be done and I needed to make some money. So I edited other people's stuff just to kind of, because it was fun for me and interesting and it put food on the table. And I edited for years. I edited other people's stuff for well over a decade. That led into a career of writing my own books. It wasn't my plan. But it showed up, and it's worked out really better than any plan I could have had. So I think part of it is I believe in goal setting. I believe in ambition completely. I believe in aspiration. But I think part of the formula for success, in a sense, is to create your goals, formulate your plan, carve out your path, be persistent about it. As you're saying, stay with it, be persistent, be patient. At the same time, there's this piece where it's like the universe knows you better than you know yourself. It's like God is smarter than you. So something else is going to come along more aptly suited for your skills and talents and abilities and temperament than you could have ever thought of. And I think that's, it's not true for everyone. Some people find their path by the age of 20 and they're right. And that's just, it works. Mm-hmm. But most of us, I think we're still looking. And
oh yeah, it's interesting. Life.
Yeah.
Life is interesting, and then when you start getting into the purpose and the being a person of value and those components, it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. I think everybody has there's a universal universal desire, which is I think everybody wants to feel that they are making a difference in the world. Everybody on some level wants to feel like after they're gone, the world is a better place, a different place, first off, has changed. It's a different place and a better place for our having been here. So survival is, goes with the territory. You got to survive to continue on. So survival is priority number one on every level: emotional, physical, financial survival. But the whole purpose of survival is to make a footprint, is to nudge the world in some way that makes it a better place. I think that's what everybody wants. And some of us find ways of doing that through our career. A lot of people just get a career going that handles their survival in a way that is enjoyable and is okay. And they find outside their career some other way, whether it's through their avocation or what they write or whatever it is, through their community, through their family, through their, so a lot of people have different ways of finding that, but I think that's what we're all looking for. We all want to have that kind of impact. If you can find a way that allows you to make your personal impact on the world, and it also pays you so you can survive at the same time, that's the money, as Guy Fieri would say. That's money. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely. John, as we wrap up, I want you to give our listeners one action item that we need to do. And how can people get in contact with you?
Second first, which is to get in contact with me, just go to my website, which is just my name. So it's johndavidmann.com. And, if you click on the contact thing, the email goes to me. So that's all my books are there. My blog is there. Everything I do, it's pretty much there. One action item a day, I would say, is to first thing in the morning. Everyone has different routines and they all fit our own style. But one thing we can all do is first thing in the morning, at the first available moment of calm, whether that's lying in bed or it's after you've jumped out of bed and handled breakfast, whatever it is, your first available moment of calm is to sit down and say, what do I not yet know that I'd like to know? It might be, what do I not yet know about my job? What do I not yet know about my wife, my husband? What do I not yet know about myself? Or just, what do I not yet know about my life? What's unknown to me that I'd like to discover? It's a good way to go into an argument or a conflict. What is it that I'm not getting about what this person is saying to me? By the way, I know this is supposed to be the last word, but I'll just expand on it this little bit. As a writer, this has happened to me this morning. I have this book that I'm writing with somebody else. I thought it was finished like a month ago. And he comes back with all these changes he wants. It's so easy to get defensive and say, no. It was perfect the way I wrote it. It was like Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Blake rolled into one the way I wrote it. It was like there's never been and that's not true, because it wasn't perfect, because it can get better. And the truth is, he's seeing something that I'm not seeing yet. Now, he may not be right in all of his criticisms. He may have points that just really, but I have learned that when I get critique about something I've written, there's always something I'm not seeing that they are, that would really be smart for me to take a deep breath and say, okay, no defensiveness. Now, what are they saying? And what is behind the words? What am I not getting yet? That's the way to grow as a person.
Simple, sounds simple, very profound, great self-awareness question that leads to better social awareness.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because we're all in this big unknowing together.
That's what I tell people, is I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, John, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. And I want to encourage everyone to purchase the book, The Go-Giver, The Go-Giver Leader, The Go-Giver Self, The Go-Giver Influence. Purchase all of them. I'm going to do the same. And remember, I believe in you, and a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.